We don't serve people like you here." The words cut through the air like a blade, sharp and deliberate. Marcus Johnson froze mid-step, his wife Samantha gripping their youngest child's hand tightly as two burly security guards stepped forward. Behind the counter stood the manager, arms crossed, lips curled into a smug smirk that made Marcus's blood boil. "What do you mean?" Marcus demanded, his voice rising over the murmurs of onlookers. "We've done nothing wrong." "Policy violation," the manager replied coldly, refusing to meet Marcus's gaze. "You need to leave, now." Guests began to gather around, some pulling out phones to record the unfolding drama, while others shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact altogether. One guard grabbed Marcus by the arm, his grip firm enough to bruise. "This is ridiculous," Marcus shot back, struggling against the hold. "What policy? Tell me what we did." But the manager simply turned away, leaving the guards to drag Marcus toward the revolving doors. The humiliation stung worse than the physical restraint. Yet, even as they pushed him closer to the exit, something inside Marcus refused to break entirely. Samantha couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched their daughter close, her voice trembling with desperation. "Please," she begged, looking at anyone who would listen. "Just tell us what we did. Why are you doing this?" Her cries echoed through the lobby, drawing more stares, but no answers. Their son tugged at her sleeve, confusion etched across his small face. "Mommy, why are they mad at us?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the chaos. Samantha didn't have an answer. All she could do was hug him tighter, shielding him from the hostile glares and intrusive cameras pointed their way. Her heart ached not just for herself but for her children, innocent bystanders caught in a storm they couldn't possibly understand. Marcus watched helplessly as his family unraveled before his eyes. Each sob tore at him, fueling a fire within, a need to protect them, to make sense of the senseless cruelty unfolding around them. As the guards tightened their grip, Marcus felt a surge of defiance bubbling beneath the surface. He locked eyes with the manager, whose arrogance faltered briefly under the weight of Marcus's glare. "You think this ends here?" Marcus muttered under his breath, low enough for only himself to hear. "Not today." His jaw clenched, teeth grinding together as he vowed silently to fight back, not just for himself but for his family. For every moment they'd been told they weren't good enough because of the color of their skin. Though outnumbered and humiliated, Marcus knew surrender wasn't an option. His resolve hardened, planting seeds of resistance that would soon blossom into action. Around them, the crowd reacted in fragments, some recording without shame, others averting their gaze as if guilt could be erased by ignorance. A woman near the elevators hesitated, lowering her phone halfway before catching Marcus's eye. There was something unreadable in her expression, perhaps sympathy or regret, but it lingered long enough to hint at untapped potential. An older man shook his head disapprovingly, muttering under his breath about this kind of nonsense. Yet, when another guest challenged him quietly, asking why he wasn't stepping in, he fell silent, retreating further into passivity. In the periphery, a young couple exchanged uneasy glances, clearly torn between speaking up and staying safe. Their hesitation spoke volumes about the societal barriers that kept so many silent. For Marcus, these reactions were both infuriating and illuminating. They revealed cracks in the system, spaces where allies might emerge if given the chance. But for now, all he could focus on was surviving this night and reclaiming the dignity stolen from him and his loved ones. Marcus Johnson didn't grow up with privilege or opportunity. Raised in inner-city Detroit, he faced poverty and systemic barriers that could have easily crushed his spirit. But Marcus wasn't one to back down. With raw talent and relentless determination, he fought his way through every obstacle life threw at him, earning scholarships, working odd jobs, and eventually becoming an architect whose designs inspired awe. His dream was simple, yet profound: to give his children a life full of chances he never had. Trips like this weekend getaway weren't just vacations, They were milestones, a way to show his kids what hard work could achieve. But now, standing in that hostile hotel lobby, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if all his sacrifices would ever truly shield them from the world's cruelty. Samantha balanced Marcus's ambition with her unwavering compassion. A teacher by profession, she poured her heart into nurturing not only their two bright children, but also countless students who looked up to her as a mentor. Her warmth and strength kept their family grounded, even during tough times. Their son idolized Marcus, often sketching buildings alongside him, while their daughter loved curling up with Samantha during bedtime stories. Together, they were a unit bound by love and resilience, a stark contrast to the hostility they now faced. As Samantha clutched their youngest child close, fear flickered in her eyes. She knew this ordeal wasn't just about them. It was about protecting their children's faith in fairness and justice. The signs had been there long before they reached the hotel. At the gas station earlier that day, the attendant barely acknowledged them, muttering something under his breath when handing back change. Later, at a roadside diner, a clumsy server spilled hot coffee on Samantha's lap without so much as an apology. Each incident felt like a pebble dropped into still water, creating ripples of unease. They brushed it off initially, chalking it up to bad luck or coincidence. But deep down, both Marcus and Samantha recognized the familiar sting of bias creeping into their trip. These moments planted seeds of doubt, making their arrival at the hotel feel heavier than expected. As they approached the luxury hotel, Samantha leaned over to Marcus, forcing a smile despite the tension building inside her. "We deserve this," she said softly, trying to shake off the day's earlier encounters. "It's been too long since we've had time together." Marcus nodded, though his jaw remained tight. He wanted to believe her words, that this trip would be a chance to recharge and reconnect, but the lingering weight of subtle hostility made it hard to fully relax. Little did they know, the worst was yet to come. The concierge barely glanced up as Marcus approached the counter, his tone clipped and distant. "Reservation name?" he asked, not bothering to mask his indifference. Meanwhile, a white family strolled in behind them, casually dressed, laughing loudly, and received warm smiles and an immediate upgrade to a suite. The contrast was glaring, and Marcus felt it like a slap. "Johnson," Marcus replied firmly, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. Samantha shifted beside him, clutching their youngest child's hand tighter. Something wasn't right. The dismissive energy radiating from the staff made every second feel heavier, planting seeds of unease that would only grow stronger. The concierge frowned at the screen, tapping slowly despite the prepaid confirmation staring back at him. "You say you paid online?" he asked skeptically, dragging out each word. "Yes, weeks ago," Marcus snapped, frustration creeping into his voice. "Check again." Instead of verifying, the man launched into intrusive questions about payment methods and identification, stalling unnecessarily. Each query felt like sandpaper against Marcus's patience. Samantha leaned closer, whispering, "Maybe there's been a mistake," but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus clenched his fists under the counter, suspicion bubbling beneath the surface. This wasn't incompetence, it was something far more deliberate. After what felt like an eternity, the concierge finally slid 2 keycards across the desk. "Your room is ready," he said flatly, avoiding eye contact. When they arrived at the assigned space, a cramped, outdated unit tucked far from the main building, Marcus couldn't contain his disbelief. "This isn't what we booked," he muttered through gritted teeth. The distance from the lobby symbolized more than just inconvenience. It underscored how little value the hotel placed on their presence. Samantha sighed, attempting to stay positive. "At least we're here now," she offered weakly, though her tone betrayed shared disappointment. Dinner in the hotel restaurant only deepened their discomfort. Staff members exchanged odd glances whenever they passed by, their movements awkward and overly deliberate. Then came the tray drop, a deafening crash near their table that startled everyone. Marcus locked eyes with the server responsible, whose apologetic smile didn't reach his eyes. "Clumsy," Samantha murmured, forcing a laugh to ease the tension. But Marcus wasn't convinced. Every glance, every stumble, every unnecessary delay chipped away at their composure. By the time dessert arrived, even the children had grown quiet, sensing the weight of hostility pressing down on them. It wasn't paranoia. It was systemic bias rearing its ugly head once again. Back in their room, Samantha tried to rationalize the day's events. "Maybe we're overthinking this," she said softly, though her voice wavered. Marcus shook his head, pacing the small space. "Overthinking? Sam, they treated us like outsiders from the moment we walked in." She didn't argue, but her silence spoke volumes. Both knew something was deeply wrong, yet neither wanted to admit how powerless they felt. As they tucked the kids into bed, the air remained heavy with unspoken fears. Whatever tomorrow held, one thing was certain. This ordeal wasn't over yet. The sharp knock on the door shattered the quiet of the night. Before Marcus could even respond, it burst open, revealing two imposing security guards. "You're being accused of property damage," one barked, his tone leaving no room for questions. "What are you talking about?" Marcus shot back, incredulity lacing his voice. "We've been in our room all evening. Come with us now, or face arrest," the second guard added coldly, ignoring his protest. Marcus stepped forward, fists clenched. "Show me proof. You can't just waltz in here and accuse us without evidence." But they weren't interested in explanations. Their stony expression said it all. This wasn't about fairness. It was about control. As Samantha pulled their children close, fear rippled through the small space. This was no misunderstanding. It was a calculated attack designed to humiliate. The confrontation spilled into the hallway, drawing immediate attention. Guests poured out of their rooms, phones raised like weapons, capturing every excruciating moment. "This is insane," Marcus muttered under his breath as he tried to shield his family from prying eyes. Some onlookers sneered openly, while others feigned discomfort, pretending not to stare. A few whispered among themselves, their judgment palpable even from a distance. Samantha clung to their youngest child, tears welling up as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. The invasive clicks of camera shutters echoed around them, amplifying her sense of exposure. "Why won't anyone help us?" she whispered hoarsely, her words barely audible over the chaos. It wasn't just the guards or hotel staff. They were surrounded by an audience complicit in their degradation. Each flash of a phone screen felt like another blow, stripping away whatever dignity they had left. Amid the commotion, Marcus's son tugged at his sleeve, his voice trembling with confusion. "Daddy, why are they mad at us? Did we do something wrong?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. How could he explain this ugliness to someone so young? Someone who still believed the world operated on logic and fairness. He knelt down, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, buddy, we didn't do anything wrong." But the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. His son deserved better than empty reassurances, and Marcus knew it. The weight of shielding his children from hatred pressed down on him, fueling a simmering rage beneath his calm exterior. As they were escorted downstairs, the cruelty escalated. Staff members exchanged smirks, their disdain thinly veiled. One muttered loud enough for them to hear, "Good riddance." Samantha sobbed uncontrollably, clutching their daughter tightly as if holding on could somehow protect her from the vitriol surrounding them. Guests lined the corridors, some jeering quietly, others simply watching with detached curiosity. No one intervened, not even when a server deliberately blocked their path, forcing Marcus to stop abruptly. Every step felt heavier than the last, each insult carving deeper wounds. By the time they reached the lobby, Marcus's hands shook with fury, though he fought to keep his composure for the sake of his family. This wasn't just humiliation. It was dehumanization, plain and simple. Standing there, surrounded by hostility, Marcus wrestled with shame, not for himself, but for his children forced to witness such cruelty. They don't deserve this, he thought, his jaw tightening. For years he'd worked tirelessly to shield them from the harsh realities of systemic racism, yet here they were, caught in its suffocating grip. Something inside him snapped. He wouldn't let this stand, not anymore. Whatever happened next, he vowed silently, they would fight back. Just as the tension reached its peak, a commanding voice cut through the chaos. What exactly is going on here? All eyes turned to Danielle Rivers, her sharp suit and unshakable presence demanding attention. She stepped forward, fixing the manager with a piercing glare that left him visibly uneasy. This family deserves answers, she continued, her tone leaving no room for evasion. And if you can't provide them, I suggest you step aside. Marcus blinked, momentarily stunned by her intervention. Who was this woman, and why did she seem so determined to help? The manager hesitated, clearly thrown off balance. For the first time since the ordeal began, Marcus felt a flicker of hope, and it came wrapped in Danielle's unwavering resolve. Danielle didn't waste time. Pulling out her phone, she held up recordings of earlier interactions, staff members exchanging dismissive glances, the concierge stalling unnecessarily, and even snippets of the security guard's accusations. I've been documenting everything, she said coolly, her words slicing through the air like steel. And trust me, these clips will find their way to every major news outlet unless you start explaining yourselves right now. The manager's face was drained of color. He stammered, his usual arrogance crumbling under the weight of Danielle's evidence. You're making a huge mistake, he tried weakly, but Danielle cut him off. No, you made a mistake when you thought this family wouldn't fight back. Now, let's talk about how we fix this. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. Marcus exchanged a glance with Samantha. They weren't alone anymore. Danielle turned to Marcus, her expression softening slightly. You've done nothing wrong, she assured him firmly. This isn't just about tonight, it's about holding them accountable for systemic racism they've likely ignored for years. Her words reignited something inside Marcus, a spark of defiance he'd almost let die. He straightened, meeting her gaze with newfound determination. We'll file a formal complaint, Danielle continued, outlining their next steps. With your consent, we'll expose not only what happened here, but also the policies enabling this kind of behavior. Samantha nodded, clutching her children closer. We want justice, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears still streaking her cheeks. Marcus felt it too, the shift from victimhood to empowerment. They weren't powerless anymore. With Danielle guiding them, they finally had a chance to make things right. Guided by Danielle's expertise, Marcus made the decision quickly. Let's do it, he said, his voice resolute. We won't stay silent while they treat us like criminals. Samantha squeezed his hand, offering silent support. Even their kids seemed to sense the change in energy, their frightened expressions giving way to cautious curiosity. It's not just about us, Marcus added, looking at Danielle. If we don't stand up now, who will? Danielle smiled faintly, nodding in approval. Exactly. Together, we'll ensure this never happens again, not here, not anywhere. The plan crystallized. Formal complaints, media exposure, and legal action. For the first time, they felt like fighters rather than victims. As Danielle pressed further, the manager's composure shattered completely. His stammering grew more frantic, his excuses weaker with each passing second. You don't understand, he pleaded, glancing around desperately for support that wasn't there. But Danielle wasn't interested in excuses. Understand this, she shot back sharply. Your actions have consequences, and those consequences start today. Watching the man unravel, Marcus felt a surge of vindication. This wasn't just one person losing control. It was the entire system faltering under scrutiny. Yet, even as the tide turned, Marcus knew the battle was far from over. Justice wouldn't come easily, but they were ready to fight for it. Danielle wasted no time. Within hours, she filed a lawsuit against the hotel, armed with irrefutable proof. Recordings of discriminatory interactions, testimonies from other guests who'd witnessed the hostility, and even internal emails revealing biased policies. "This isn't just about one family," Danielle explained to Marcus and Samantha as they reviewed the documents together. "It's about dismantling the system that allowed this to happen." The hotel's legal team scrambled to respond, but their defenses crumbled under the weight of evidence. News outlets began picking up snippets of the case, amplifying the pressure. Marcus felt a surge of vindication as he signed the final papers. "They thought we'd stay silent," he said, his voice steady. "But now, the whole world will know what they've done." The lawsuit wasn't just a step toward justice. It was a declaration that systemic racism wouldn't go unchallenged. By morning, hashtags like #Justice for the Johnsons and #End Hotel Racism was trending worldwide. Social media users shared videos of the incident, dissecting every detail and demanding accountability. "How dare they treat a family like this?" one post read, echoing the outrage spreading across platforms. Another user wrote, "This is why we need stronger anti-discrimination laws. Enough is enough." Support poured in, not just online but offline too. Strangers sent messages of solidarity, while activists organized protests outside the hotel chain's headquarters. Samantha scrolled through the posts, overwhelmed by the outpouring of empathy. "I can't believe so many people care," she murmured, her voice trembling with gratitude. For Marcus, it was confirmation that their fight had ignited something bigger, a movement fueled by collective voices refusing to accept injustice. The backlash hit hard and fast. Cancellations flooded in. Sponsors severed ties, and protesters gathered daily outside the hotel's doors, holding signs that read, "No racism in hospitality." Desperate to salvage what little remained of its reputation, the hotel issued a public apology, but it rang hollow against the mounting evidence of systemic bias. Then came the manager's resignation, announced abruptly during a press conference. His departure symbolized more than just personal failure. It marked the crumbling of an oppressive regime within the establishment. "They're panicking," Danielle noted, showing Marcus news updates on her phone. This is exactly what happens when privilege meets accountability. Yet, even as the hotel promised sweeping reforms, Marcus knew true change wouldn't come easily. Apologies were meaningless without action, and they weren't done holding them accountable. Back home, surrounded by loved ones, Marcus and Samantha finally allowed themselves to breathe. Laughter filled the air as friends and family celebrated their triumph, clinking glasses and sharing stories of resilience. "You did it," Samantha whispered, leaning into Marcus. "We all did." Their children beamed, soaking in the joy around them. For the first time in days, they felt safe, cherished even. "It's not over," Marcus reminded everyone, raising his glass. "But tonight we celebrate. Tomorrow, we will keep fighting." The room erupted in cheers, a testament to the strength of unity and perseverance. Though scars remained, dignity had been reclaimed, and that was worth celebrating. Later that evening, Marcus knelt beside his kids, his expression soft yet resolute. "No matter what anyone says," he began, his voice unwavering, "remember your worth. You deserve respect, not because of what you do, but because of who you are." His son nodded solemnly, while his daughter hugged him tightly, drawing comfort from his words. Samantha watched silently, pride swelling in her chest. Marcus wasn't just teaching their children. He was instilling values that would guide them through life's challenges. The lesson was clear. Standing tall meant refusing to let hatred define them, and together they would continue rising above.